Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first ever free webinar of the Yacht Broker Masterclass. Just a couple of pieces of housekeeping, really. First of all, I'm hoping everybody can hear me okay. If you can't, I'm relying on you to leave a message in the chat because I have no other way of knowing. I've actually found that this is the best way to do webinars. I once tried to do a webinar using different camera angles and sound equipment. It all went horribly wrong, and the most reliable way seems to be literally just opening up my laptop and talking to the camera. The actual masterclass itself is going to be recorded in 4K. It's going to be a very high production value masterclass, but above all, high in the value of the information that we give. And it's my intention that by doing this first webinar on 3 particular topics, undoubtedly a lot of questions will be generated. Now, I'll try my best to answer your questions in the course of this webinar, but I think inevitably some will go unanswered, some could be expanded upon more fully than the way that I do so now. And so those will make the basis of future webinars, which I hope to do every second week. This particular webinar, we had 3 topics. They were dealing with buyers and sellers, the inside story of buying and owning a yacht, and relationships, the people surrounding the person who actually makes the decision and how important it is to build those relationships. I'm going to go through those 3 topics sort of reasonably quickly. I would imagine it'll take no more than 15 minutes to cover those. And I'd invite as many questions as you want to ask. The idea is for me to be able to give you as much information as I can, so that at the end, I'll then deal with all of your questions as far as I possibly can. And starting with that topic of dealing with buyers and sellers, because in any deal, there's basically a buyer and a seller. Once you have a buyer who really wants to buy something and a seller that really wants to sell that something, you have the basis of a deal. And as a yacht broker, it's your job to maneuver things around, to make the circumstances right so that the buyer is basically happy with what is paying, the seller is basically happy with what they're getting, and you as a broker are basically happy with the commission that you get as well. Very rarely does everybody get everything that they want. And so the broker has the difficult and challenging position to be able to make all of the circumstances work for all of the parties as far as that is possible. One thing that I want to say to anybody listening to this free webinar who really wants to become a yacht broker is a word of warning with regard to the buyer, because a seller is fairly straightforward. A seller already owns a yacht, and so you know that you have a product and that you have somebody who wants to sell that product. Not so with a buyer. That's a whole different subject altogether. And sadly, we work in an industry that is so glamorous and so appealing to so many people that it is riddled with individuals who want to pretend to buy yachts. Now, that might sound outrageous to you, but let me tell you, it's absolutely the case. And many, many yacht brokers in the industry will verify what I'm saying to you. So it's highly important when you're dealing with buyers not to waste your time. It is incredible to me how many people will go on a flight of fantasy pretending to be a billionaire and use you as a yacht broker to live out that fantasy. You can waste so much time doing that. Really, I just wanted to give that word of warning to new brokers or to people who want to enter into the industry. Always research who your buyer is. Don't waste time with people who actually aren't really in a position to buy anything at all. Doesn't mean to say you have to be discourteous to them, but at least channel your efforts and your attention to those that actually can properly buy a yacht. It's pretty easy to do. A Google search will quickly tell you whether somebody is the founder of a company, the CEO of a company. If you match their email address to the name of the company, then you know that you've got somebody who at least is not completely wasting your time and has certain assets. It's not always the case that you can find people on Google. I've had clients who are totally invisible on Google, but at least have that conversation with them at a certain point. If all they want is to be sent an email with details of a yacht, that might take you a minute to do. There's absolutely no problem with sending that to to a client. But once they start asking more and more and more questions, and maybe even want to come and visit the yacht that you have for sale, you kind of owe it to the seller of the yacht to at least know who it is that you're bringing to his yacht and not to waste his time. And you owe it to yourself as a professional not to waste your own time doing hours and hours of research and emails of somebody who may not even be in a position to buy. So research is important. And actually, in my experience, highly wealthy people are quite used to being asked that question. If they don't have any real profile online, it comes as no surprise to them when they're buying a private jet, a luxury residence, or any expensive item. They kind of will expect to be asked certain questions about who they are before they can proceed, as long as it's done in a respectful and a professional manner. With regard to the seller, in the yachting industry, we have what's called a central agency agreement, which is a great agreement to get if you're a yacht broker. Sometimes it's as difficult to negotiate a central agency agreement as it is to actually sign up a sales contract for a yacht. But having a central agency agreement is sometimes difficult because there's a misconception amongst sellers that it gives you exclusive rights to sell the yacht. In a certain sense, that's true, but in a big sense, it's not. So in other words, if a central agency is given to Edmiston, for example, that does not prevent somebody from Camper & Nicholson's or Fraser's or Ocean Independence selling the yacht. They can still bring their buyers. And in fact, there's a very well-structured system within the yachting industry that allows brokers to work with each other so that everybody gets a reasonable chunk of the pie at the end when the yacht is sold. A central agent is exactly what it says. It's the agent who is at the center of the deal. It's your responsibility to be able to field all of those inquiries, to filter out the time wasters, but above all, to give good, accurate information, beautiful photographs, maybe even a great video of the yacht to any other broker who has a client for that yacht. So you really need to make sure that the technical specifications that you supply are super accurate. The photographs that you supply are to a high quality. And if you do a video, of course, that the video too is informative and engaging. The topic of dealing with buyers and sellers also brings you into a topic, which is the second theme in this, of what's involved in owning a yacht and in buying a yacht. And I did quite a bit of research on this subject, and it became very clear to me that it's extremely complex. Owning a yacht is an absolute minefield as far as tax is concerned, especially depending on where the yacht is owned, or where the owner of the yacht is based, where the yacht is going to be used, the way it's going to be used, brings in all kinds of tax implications. And I'm quite sure that most people on this free webinar are similar to me, that they don't particularly want to be staying up at night reading what the tax laws are in Detroit or in Cyprus to protect their clients. What they want to be doing is marketing and selling a yacht, negotiating, making the deal happen. And that's why it's very, very important for anybody who wants to enter the brokerage industry to develop relationships with industry professionals. There are companies who specialize in the wealth management of yacht owners, and many of them have yachting divisions. It's so important for any potential yacht broker to know who those companies are and to build relationships with them. That doesn't mean to say that the broker doesn't have to know anything about ownership or anything about flag states. Of course, you want to be able to have an intelligent conversation with your clients. But on the other hand, it's very, very dangerous to give advice on such matters, which can actually come and bite you in the behind at a later date. It needs to be understood, first of all, how your client is going to use the yacht. Is he using it privately or is he using it commercially? Because that will affect both the flag state and the ownership structure. And there as well, don't think that the flag and the ownership are the same thing. Just because a yacht has a Cayman Islands flag, for example, It doesn't mean to say that it has to have a Cayman Islands ownership company. It can be owned in one country, flagged in another. The flag is effectively the nationality of the yacht, and you'll find out why that's important in a moment. It's the nationality of the yacht. When you see that floating object out at sea with the flag on the back, it's effectively a little bit of that country floating along, and that yacht is subject to the laws of the flag state that it's flying. You've probably heard stories, for example, of the captain of a ship who can perform a marriage ceremony and legally marry a couple on the ship. That's only true if the country that's of the flag that the ship is flying allows a captain to do that. It's not always the case, because that ship or that yacht is subject to the laws of the country whose flag it's flying. That's also important because every country has their own regulations on how a yacht should be built, the standards of yacht construction. And that's why it's always advisable that your client should take a flag in one of the states that has already a well-established yacht building reputation. Cayman Islands, Malta, the UK, to name just a few. You can just imagine, from the perspective of a port authority, if you see a yacht or any other boat come to that, coming into your port with some weird and wonderful flag that's difficult to identify, it literally flags up so many alarms that the only result of that is going to be, for sure, that the port authority is going to go to the yacht and make sure that it's built in a way that's acceptable in those territorial waters. And the last thing that you want for your clients as they pull into Monaco on their first cruise is that the Coast Guard board them with their boots on and start asking for documents and papers because they don't recognize the flag. So on the one hand, of course, you don't want to get into too much detail with your clients. That's for a professional to do. But certainly you can advise your clients to have at least a well-established flag state. I say that because I had a client once who had the weirdest flag state on his yacht. And when I asked him how he chose it, it was a friend of his told him it would be a good idea. And I remember thinking, what a bizarre way to choose your flag state, rather than actually getting a professional to give you the advice that can prevent you so many problems. It's also an important factor to consider if you have a client who's building a new yacht. Now, some yacht builders will already say, we are building to the requirements of this flag state. But if your client wants to have a particular flag on board, he needs to let the builder know sooner rather than later, so that they can communicate with the flag state and make sure that that yacht is built according to the requirements of that flag. You might be listening to this webinar from the United States, in which case, thank you very much for tuning in. And in the United States, you might just think, well, it's simple enough. American owner, American flag. It's actually not the case, depending on how your client is going to use the yacht. If you have an American flag, every captain and every officer on the yacht, every captain, there'll only be one captain, the captain and the officers on the yacht have to have American passports. And there is a 75-25 ratio of the crew who also have to have American passports. So that restricts greatly the crew that your client can hire for his yacht. And especially if the yacht is going to be chartering in the Bahamas, for example, or the Caribbean, the Exumas, that might be just too restrictive and very, very expensive. So many American owners opt to have different flags for their yachts so they can have a bigger range of crew and they can reduce the costs just a little bit so that they can make the commercial activity of the yacht more productive. So there's lots and lots to take into consideration with flag states. Ownership structures too. There's I think there's a lot of people with a very cynical outlook on ownership structures who immediately say, yes, yacht owners, they have a shell company within a shell company within a shell company because they're dodging tax. The truth is that that's maybe sometimes the case, but not always the case. A certain amount of anonymity is desirable for a lot of very wealthy people. In the course of my career, I've had two
clients who've been involved in kidnapping. I mean, they weren't the kidnappers, of course, but members of their family have actually been kidnapped. There's a lot of concerns that very, very wealthy people have. And there's a lot of reasons why they might want an asset not to be easily identifiable with them, especially an asset which clearly shows the level of wealth that they have. Also, naturally, yacht owners want to be involved with intelligent tax planning, and the ownership structure will do a lot to reduce potentially millions and millions of dollars of tax liabilities just because they have the wrong ownership structure. Another reason why you really do well to get to know companies that manage these ownership structures and that keep up to date with the regulations and the laws that are involved with the ownership structures. And in fact, that segues rather nicely into the third topic that we're going to discuss, which is that of relationships. Brokerage is such a relationships-based business, not just relationships with the owner, but relationships with surveyors, lawyers, companies that do ownership structures. Your job as a yacht broker is really not so much to sell yachts. It's not about sell. Brokerage is more about bringing the right people together to make a deal happen. I said at the beginning that when you have a willing buyer and a willing seller, the broker then is there to bring people together. It's not just about bringing buyer and seller together. Sometimes there are people involved, whether it's the spouse of the buyer, whether it's the best friend of the buyer, whether it's the managing director who the client has given the responsibility to deal with the yacht purchase. That happens very, very often. It might be their wealth management company. You need to find the right lawyer. You need to find the right surveyor. You need relationships. And particularly for people who are on this webinar, who are maybe at the beginning of their career or are just thinking of embarking on this career, it's very important to be aware that a lot of the work that you do will be about understanding the other roles that other people in the deal have and getting to know people that you can trust to be able to look after your clients. A final little point that I want to make before I start taking your questions is regarding the relationship with the client. And I just want to tell you a story that's always stuck in my mind, and it's from at least 20 years ago when I used to attend the Genoa boat show with Ferretti Group. And I spent a lot of time with Ferretti dealers, and I learned a lot from them, a lot. Mostly great examples, occasionally bad examples, but on the whole, some very, very good ones. And I remember one particular client I got to know very well because he'd bought a series of Ferrettis, and then he went on bigger and bigger and bigger. And he ended up with a very large yacht that he actually could have gone through any broker in the world to buy, or as a matter of fact, he could have gone direct to the shipyard. But he always stuck with the same Ferretti dealer. And I remember saying to him, why is that? We got to know each other quite well, as far as you can get to know a client quite well. Over a course of many years, we've been out to dinner many, many times. I knew his family reasonably well. And so I felt I could ask him that question, why have you stuck with the same person selling your yachts? And I'll never forget, he took a moment and he said, I don't know, really. I like him. He remembers my birthday. He sent me tickets to the cup final when my team got in the cup final. He had once a stock boat, and he took us out onto a lake, and we had a picnic together. It was all about his relationship with that particular dealer, and that good relationship saw that dealer through to many, many sales with that particular client. And there's space for all kinds of different personalities in the brokerage industry. I know some people who are like bulldozers. They just forge ahead. It looks like they're not even listening to what they're being told. They're totally consumed in getting a deal done, and they cause all kinds of devastation and ruin in their wake as they go. Others are like surgeons. working with laser precision and intricacy, analyzing every word that they say in an email, the best time to call, the best yachts to present to their clients. But what they all have in common is their relationship with their clients. It really is a relationships business. Now, I'm going to quickly take a look at some of the comments to see, and there's quite a few of them. Most of them are saying hello. So hello to everybody here. Patrick Abbas has, I think, watched the Yachts for Sale YouTube channel probably since the beginning. So thanks, Patrick, and for all of your support. He makes a very good comment. He says that a proper buyer will already have a recent proof of funds ready to share with you. KYC is the utmost importance, and especially in this time, referring to the political situation. That is so true. And I've actually been with clients who have been making another purchase, who've been requested for proof of funds. I think the one that I heard was called a personal wealth statement. They produced it like that. They expected the question, and they produced it immediately. The client I was with banked with Coutts, and he called his guy at Coutts and immediately was able to send a personal wealth statement. KYC, for those of you that don't know, and forgive me if you already know what it is, but KYC is know your client. And in a world where there is so much drug trafficking, terrorism, so many illegal drug trafficking, so many illegal uses of funds, that if you're in a business that deals with a lot of money, and Yacht Brokerage does deal with a lot of money, you have to know who you're dealing with, and you have to be able to demonstrate that you know who you're dealing with. It's not enough anymore to be able to just take somebody's money and sell them a boat. The banks themselves will want to know, where's this money come from? Who is he? How did he make the money? There are ways that there are actually blacklists where some people are blacklisted from transferring money. You have to have looked at those lists and know that you're dealing with somebody who you can legally deal with. If you don't, the consequences are absolutely dire, even leading to possibly being put in jail under certain circumstances. So Patrick, that's a super important comment. And actually, a thought I've got for a future project is I might even do a little mini course on KYC one day. I wouldn't do it myself because it's such a specialist subject, but I'd be quite interested in getting a specialist to do a mini course on KYC so that I can continue to offer services to potential yacht brokers. Vimal Roy, by the way, just before I take Vimal's comment, I'm sure that I saw somebody say hello from Pakistan, which really surprised me. I mean, it's great that people are from all kinds of countries from far, far away. Oh yes, SMA, hello from Pakistan. Hello back to you, SMA. Thanks for joining us. Vima Roy says, what's a nice way to ask this question about wealth without being offensive? So the KYC question is very easy to ask because, as I've just mentioned, wealthy people know that they have to provide KYC with any acquisition that they do. But I think what you're asking about is somebody's inquired about a yacht and you're not sure whether it's worth spending a lot of time on them or not because you can't find anything about them online. What I always say to people is the seller of this yacht has asked me to research anybody that comes to the yacht or who makes an offer on the yacht. I hope you don't mind. You've been able to keep a very low profile on the internet. So would you mind please giving me a little information that I can give to the seller? Now, what I found is that on most occasions, people are fine with that and they'll send you through what they've got. Some people get absolutely furious. And to me, that's a sign that they've probably just been caught out, to be quite honest. I had one guy, I was selling a Mangusta 165 called Serenity. I think the asking price was 15 million. And the response I got to the guy who was inquiring was, how dare you? I could buy this yacht 10 times over. I could buy the shipyard if I wanted. He went up on such a rant. And I thought, yeah, probably not an actual real client, I would say. And if he was, he probably wasn't the sort of personality that I would have worked very well with in any case. Christian Hack, thanks for your question, Christian. What tax and legal advisor do you recommend? That depends so much upon where the client is from, to be quite honest. When I've put together the masterclass course, the module that deals with this subject has been approved by a company called Equium, who are based in Monaco, but they're really quite international. And I chose them partly because they'd helped me with the situation that I had, but also because I know a lot of clients who use them. And they do a variety of wealth management solutions, but they have a yachting division. And so what I did when I wrote the module for the Yacht Broker Masterclass, I wrote it together with one of their specialists, and then I had them read it through to make sure that it was all accurate and correct. So, for me and clients in this area, I tend to point them towards Equium, but there are a lot of other solutions. Very often a marine lawyer will also be able to offer tax advice and flag advice and ownership structures advice. So the short answer is it depends upon where the client's from as to who would be the best person to point them towards. I hope that answers the question. Penelope, you're going to love this. Thank you so much. Penelope sent me some coffee. I really appreciate. I haven't opened it yet. I'm going to. It's still sealed. So thanks, Penelope, for joining. She's high off from the Canadian Rockies and the glorious golden morning in the fair city of Calgary, Alberta. Lydia Yakova, I knew I was going to have this problem. Yakovovich. Sorry, Lydia. I feel like I've just butchered your surname. Oh, nice. If someone is interested, here is the number of registered super yachts by flag states. That's really useful. Thank you very much. I've just gone a little bit too far down with the questions, so bear with me. From time to time, I have the questions in like a sidebar, and from time to time, they just suddenly fall to the bottom. I'm trying to go through them in the order to which I've received them. Walter, oh, hi, Walter. Walter Urs Schmidt. Hope that you're well. How important is it to have excellent communication skills, and where do you see the biggest problems that would need to be solved? I'm pausing for thought on this because some brokers that I know who are very successful, in my opinion, don't have great communication skills. Most do, 90% do. And of course, communication is very, very important in it. But I think the most important skill is to be a problem solver. Because as anybody on this webinar who's had experience in yacht brokerage knows, so many things can go wrong. And all the time, you need to be finding solutions and finding problems. And whilst excellent communication skills are way up there at the top of skills that are important for brokerage, problem solving and thinking outside the box and diplomacy are probably the most important skills. Where do you see the biggest problems that would need to be solved? That's a difficult one to answer, to be quite honest. Yes, I think one of the biggest problems is a lack of preparation sometimes, especially when you're responsible to sell a yacht. You need to really be familiar, not just with the specification of the yacht, but also details such as the tax status of the yacht. I was selling a yacht, and this, by the way, here is an example of me doing something wrong. I'm not only going to use the times that I get something right. I was selling a yacht once, and it was VAT paid, and I'd actually seen the VAT paid certificate. And we came to the contracts being exchanged, and I discovered that actually the VAT had been paid and then reclaimed back. So it was no longer a VAT paid yacht. And those are the kind of problems that you come across that could be avoided just with a little bit more time, a little bit more deep preparation and deep research. So yeah, in answer to your question, I think communication skills are super important. Diplomacy problem solving probably even more important. And one of the biggest problems is inadvertently misrepresenting yachts because you haven't quite found out as much about them as you thought you knew. Hope that answers the question. Super Yacht Captain Tristan, how are you, my friend? David, you mentioned earlier that if you had a qualified buyer for a particular yacht, you would happily pass the client's name onto the seller. Would you do the same if the boat was listed with a different brokerage? Yeah, I don't always pass the client's name onto the seller, to be honest. I try not to do that for obvious reasons, depending on how well you know the seller, of course, and the level of trust that you have. But I will tell the seller details about who they are, in the sense of, this is the founder of a Forbes 500 company. This is one of the Saudi royal family. This is a tech entrepreneur who sold his business for 3 billion. Enough to give the seller confidence that we're not wasting our time by going into negotiations. Because bear in mind, Tristan, that when you really get into negotiations, quite often the seller will activate his lawyer, and then all of a sudden the legal fees are building up. And no matter how wealthy the seller is, it really irritates them to have paid hefty legal fees on a deal that doesn't go ahead because I've just introduced somebody to them who actually wasn't in a position to buy the yacht. Your second question is kind of related to that. Would you do the same if the boat was listed with a different brokerage? Generally speaking, brokers are very protective about the names of their clients. And I completely respect that. I completely respect it and completely understand it. There is, I've noticed in Monaco in the south of France, there is a group of highly experienced and highly successful, actually quite young yacht brokers who get together socially, and they are reasonably open in discussing deals and even names of clients, because they have an amazing bond of trust between them. Even though they're from competing companies, they have this incredible bond of trust, and the result of that is that some really great deals are coming out from that small collective group of yacht brokers. So a lot depends on the level of trust that you've got with the people that you're talking to. Let me just see if there's other questions. Penelope, love what you do. All else will follow through. How to be a productivity ninja. That's great. Thanks, Penelope. And she also says, on the subject of accounting, I've newly discovered the Voli Super Yacht software for accounting. Good for all, excellent for stews. I don't know, to be honest. Sorry, Penelope. I actually don't know. I know that there's a lot of accountancy software being produced now for cruise, and it's quite a developing industry. Some yacht management companies have their own proprietary accountancy software, but it's not something I've ever had to use, so I don't really know much about it. Lydia, hi David, what would you say are the main differences between charter brokers and sales brokers? Oh, huge differences. And it's a very, very good question. And before I entered the brokerage industry, I would have asked that question too. And I naively came into the industry thinking it was pretty much the same. It's really not at all. A sales broker is very much selling a product. They're selling a yacht. And whilst it's true that you sell the dream, and whilst it's true that your strategy, of course, is that you want your buyer to dream of being on the yacht, and there's lots of ways that you can use that to achieve a sale, you're still selling a product. A charter broker is selling an experience. And so just as a charter broker may be shocked by my complete lack of knowledge of the Greek islands and my total unawareness that certain islands in Greece are so windy in the summer that you really can't take a boat there, whilst other islands are perfect. A charter broker will know the best chefs, the best itineraries. They're really very much interested into the experiential side of it. And I would be shocked that they don't know the difference between a Ferretti and an Azimuth, or a Sunseeker and a San Lorenzo. But to them, it's less important because that's not what they're selling. For them, I might look at a San Lorenzo and say that's absolutely not the right yacht for this particular buyer. It's not what he's looking for at all. He wants a steel hull. He doesn't want fiberglass, for example. That's not what a charter broker is looking at all. They're saying, I know this captain, I know the crew, I know the chef, the layout of the yacht is perfect. It's going to be in Montenegro at the time they want to be there. So they approach the whole industry in a very, very different light, completely. And when you get a sales broker who can work very closely with a charter broker, you can do really wonderful things as one refers clients to the other refers clients back the other way. I hope that, I feel like I answered the question. I feel like I answered it quite well, actually. I should pat myself on the shoulder for that. But if you'd like more details, Lydia, just put another question in the comments. Patrick, I used to be compliance fraud consultancy for about 15 plus banks. We need you, Patrick. Hence my knowledge of this topic. Yeah, it's the topic of KYC is a very, very hot topic, and for a long time it was far more hot in the Med than it was in the United States. But now it's also becoming a real issue in the United States as more and more companies having to comply with KYC. Ian Smith, I think Ian was the first person to comment. He told me that he was already here on the course, so thanks for that, Ian. David, is there a fixed process for the buyers and sellers of yachts, as there is with a property sale and purchase, please? Yes, there is. The Yacht Broker Masterclass goes through the two principal contracts that are used. One is very, very popular in the United States. The other is very, very popular in the Med, although not to say that you couldn't use one for another geographic area. One's called the MEBA contract and the other is called the EBA contract. But they both have the same fundamental principles, which is that the buyer has the rights to sea trial the vessel and to survey the vessel, that a deposit is put down, usually 10%, not always, but usually 10%. A deposit really triggers the process. That's held in escrow. It can be returned to the buyer under far more stringent conditions for the MEBA contract than the EBA contract. The EBA contract, actually, you can get your money back at any point, pretty much, and for any reason, pretty much. I'll go into a lot more detail than that on the course, but they basically have the same principles to them. So the nightmare, which I've actually gone through, is when you have a buyer or a seller who say, I want my own lawyer to do the sales and purchase agreements, and their own lawyer has no experience in yachting. And then they go to a shipping lawyer, and the difference between a ship purchase agreement and a yacht purchase agreement is colossal. And the whole thing becomes a nightmare as these lawyers try to reinvent the wheel. The wheel being these two perfectly good contracts that already exist. Many would say, and they're probably right, they could be tweaked, they could be improved, but they've been responsible for successfully selling probably tens of thousands of yachts over the course of their existence. I hope that answers the question for you. Let me know if not. Eric Magolnik, any other examples of good ways to establish relationships with dealers? Yeah, there's lots of ways. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure if I've done it yet. I don't think I have. But in the email that you received, there's a link, and I think it says something like, oh no, that's a different email that I'm sending out at a later date. I'm going to put a link afterwards in the description to this video that you can look at, and it's to a series of videos that I published 3 years ago called Breaking into Brokerage. And they outline lots of ways that you can network, build relationships. The one thing about the yachting industry is that there are a lot of opportunities to network, not just going down the local pub. Our local pub is called Slammers, and if I went there now, I can be sure that there'll be dealers and brokers and all kinds of yachting people there. Not just that, but there are organized events as well, specifically for networking. There are so many opportunities. Boat shows, of course, are an opportunity to network and to build relationships. But yeah, I'll make a note of that. Link As soon as this webinar finishes, I'll add that link to a playlist of videos on that topic. Anton Eroshin, hello everyone from Turkey, from the Mediterranean. David, thanks for the webinar. Thank you, Anton. That's not a very Turkish name, so I'm guessing that you're there maybe on business. Massive yachting community and yachting business in Turkey. Stefan Vogues, hello from South Africa. Hello to you too. Great to hear. Pakistan, South Africa, Turkey, and Vimal Roy from Barcelona. Ian Smith says qualification is required and it's how the information is collated is the key. You're absolutely right. Ingle99. Hi, David. I've recently founded a new build yacht owners representative company, Ultimar, and I've worked with a few brokers in my career. I have two questions in regards to new build brokerage. What are the key differences between... Oh, I've just lost the feed. Bear with me 1 second. As I said earlier, every so often the feed just suddenly drops to the bottom. What are the key differences between yacht brokerage for new build projects and brokerage for pre-owned yachts? And in terms of establishing long-term relationships with clients, what approaches have you found effective in the new build yacht brokerage field? So, yacht brokerage is pre-owned yachts, but so a pre-owned yacht is a brokerage yacht. But you mentioned new build, which is different because it's not pre-owned. And the biggest difference is the contract. The contracts I mentioned a few moments ago are for brokerage yachts. They're for pre-owned yachts. A new build contract is quite a different animal, and it has to be because there are so many more things to consider when you're constructing a yacht. Actually, again, there's a module in the Yacht Broker Masterclass that goes into huge detail about new build contracts. And I did that with Hill Dickinson Law Firm because they've dealt with a lot of new construction contracts. From a brokerage perspective, it's great to get a new build because usually you get paid your commission with all of the stage payments. So if you're building a large yacht, which can be a 3-year project quite easily, you know that at certain stages, you're going to be paid a commission. And cash flow for a broker, oh, what a luxury that is, because otherwise, the yacht brokers are going from one sale to the next, never knowing when cash is going to come in next. It could be quite a stressful industry from that perspective, that every deal you do could be your last deal. Whereas with a new build, at least you've got that luxury of knowing that money is going to be coming in over a period of time. With regards to your comment about establishing long-term relationship with clients, it's actually really not that difficult. Like I mentioned in the story that I said earlier on, little things like remembering people's birthdays, it's amazing how far that goes. Remembering who their favorite football team is. I mean, I know a lot of brokers who have such a great relationship with their clients. They're calling each other almost every week, even if it's just with a joke that they heard, or that they've just, I'll tell you one good thing to do, that they've heard a little snippet of information from the industry, something that's about to become available for sale. Yacht owners love that. If there's one thing that yacht owners love, it's to talk about yachts 99% of the time. I mean, I've had clients that are happy to be interrupted out of a meeting if I call, because it means it's something to do with their yacht, and they love talking about their yachts. So it's good to keep in contact with them with any little bit of information that you've learned from the industry. Let them know when boat shows are coming up. At the same time, you need to really know who your client is. I've also had clients who would be really irritated if I was to do that with them, and they far more respect me and appreciate me because I keep a distance when it's necessary, and they call me when they need my services. So you need to understand who the client is and the best way to treat them. Ian Smith says, where are you located yourself, David? I live in Monaco, and I'm in Monaco at the moment. I travel a lot. I'll be in Monaco now through the Cannes Boat Show. Well, I'll be in Cannes in the Cannes Boat Show, but it's close by. I have a trip to Mallorca towards the end of the month. Then we have the Monaco Boat Show, and then I'm planning on going to Miami probably for October and maybe half of November. But Home is Monaco. I'm probably talking far too much about this, but since you've got me started, I lived in Italy for almost 30 years. My kids were all born in Italy and brought up in Italy. So Italy is in my heart, but I live in Monaco because it's a great place for business. Lydia says that's actually pretty close to how my name is pronounced. Well done. Thank you very much. Penelope, thanks for all your comments. I'm not going to read them all out, but I am reading them and I appreciate it. SMA says means a project engineer would do great here. I'm guessing that you're talking about the new construction projects, and you're absolutely right. And then that's another of the relationships it's important to build up. Yeah, you need to know people who do project management, especially for new constructions, and they're not all the same. Some people do project management for production fiberglass yachts. Others are very experienced in steel yachts. I had an interesting inquiry, and I think this is worth mentioning, an interesting inquiry from somebody who's building a yacht in Turkey. And they said to me, we need a project manager, but we need somebody who's not going to argue with the shipyard. We've worked very hard to have a good relationship with the shipyard, and we don't want our project manager going in and spoiling it. I thought that was a very wise approach, and I was able to find them somebody who'd worked with that shipyard before, had a very friendly relationship with the shipyard, but at the same time would keep an eye on the quality of production and be able to push it in the right direction and report back. So there's a lot of factors to consider with project management. Dennis Diduk. Hi, Denise. How are you? I hope that you're well. Look forward to seeing you at the Cannes Boat Show. Let me know what you're going to have there on display. She says, fully agree, David. In the yacht sales, in addition to communication skills, you would need to have skills of a crisis manager. Yes, you really do. Crisis management is definitely something that's important from time to time. Keeping a level head as well, which has never been my strong point. I must be honest, sometimes things really make my blood boil. In my case, I then just have to go for a walk, calm down, and see things from a more objective point of view. But crisis management is definitely important. Well, that's good. Tristan's telling Penelope that he used volley when he was the captain of AWOL, and it's great. Good feedback. Thanks for that, Tristan. Ingle99, I've come across many successful brokers, but they seem to have very limited construction and operation knowledge. Would you think this is important? I think that every broker comes with their own skill set and knowledge. I've never worked as crew on a yacht, and there's been many, many occasions where I wish I had that skill set. Not least of all, a quick story. I was with a client at the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show. Now, I've been in the industry almost 30 years, by the way. To my shame, I've been in the industry almost 30 years. And the client had a Riva Bahamas, and it was on display at the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show. And he asked me if I wanted to go down the river to take it. I mean, it was a 45-minute trip because it was actually docked far away from the boat show. So it was a long boat trip. It was a great opportunity to spend time with this client. And thankfully, he had other friends on board who did have some experience as crew. We were pulling into the dock, and he said to me, David, get the fenders out, will you? I don't know how to tie the knot for a fender. I can see Tristan already putting his head in his hands. I don't know how to tie, you know, that knot where they put the cord over the railing and loop it and pull it up. I don't know how to do that. And so my lack of knowledge as a crew has sometimes put me in embarrassment, and is shameful, actually. Every single year I say, I need to learn to sail. I need to learn how to do this. However, I'm one of the few brokers I know who worked for a yacht builder for 10 years for Ferretti Group. And I was very fortunate. I worked in the very early days writing the technical owner's manuals for their fiberglass production range. I was crawling through the bilge. I mean, back then I didn't know what a bilge was, let alone a bilge pump. And yet my job was to figure it all out, to put it in English, to have the diagrams written out so that the owners could then have actually, you know what, I should bring one of those books and put it here in my office, because it's kind of a part of my history that I'm proud of. I produced hundreds of these things. And then when I went on to work for Custom Line, I took on more of a commercial role. And then Custom Line was built by CRN. So I was also involved with the production of a few steel and aluminium yachts. And that's kind of what I feel I bring to the party when I'm talking to a client. I do know about how yachts are built, and particularly with Ferretti's at one point I really knew every model, the pros, the cons. So in answer to your question, I think that every broker has their story. They all have their own background. They all bring something to the party. The construction knowledge, there's very few that I think have a really good construction knowledge. And at the risk of sort of dwelling too much on this, it really irritates me when we go as a group of yacht brokers to a shipyard and the brokers start critiquing the way that the yacht's being built. I just feel like saying, you think you can do better, mate? Do it yourself, but don't stand here and criticize somebody who's actually building a very, very beautiful yacht. It's easy to sit back and criticize it. It's not so easy to actually do it. Operational knowledge, there are a few yacht brokers, not least of which Tristan Mortlock, super yacht captain, who have serious operational knowledge, and they tend to be very, very successful. Within Northrop and Johnson, we have Wes Sanford, who I think was a captain for quite a while, and you can tell talking to him, he really knows his stuff. So I think construction and operation knowledge is not necessarily important as long as you're bringing something to the party that your client can benefit from. There's somebody with no name here. I don't know how you did that. I didn't know that's even possible on YouTube. It says, is it done to ask for a proof of funds in the research of client status? It's actually a good question. Proof of funds, yes, I think you should really. You should at least know who it is that you're talking to. Patrick will correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that proof of funds is necessary for the KYC. The proof of funds comes along a little bit later on when the client wants to go and see the yacht, and then you really want to know that at least they've got the funds they're necessary to buy it. Penelope, I'm reading what you said, but I'm kind of sliding down because it's not a question as such. And once again, my questions have all slid to the bottom, so I'm having to slide back up. H2O333. Hello. Hello, H2O333. I'm a crew recruiter. Often crew get in the industry for the wrong reason, especially with the image of yachting on social media. This is such a good question, so dear to my heart. What is your opinion on how to promote the real yachting? Let me be frank on this subject. Yes, I think people, let's be frank, people are watching Below Deck, aren't they? People watch Below Deck, and I watched an episode and a half of that because I thought that before I speak badly of it, I should have at least watched some of it, and I couldn't watch more than 1.5 episodes. And I've read a lot about what they do on Below Deck, and I've actually spoken to some of the producers, so I know the formula. That's really a formula designed to create drama. And as Tristan and any self-respecting captain and crew will tell you, it should be all about the owner and about the yacht, not about the drama amongst the crew. If people are watching Below Deck and think, hey, there's a yacht full of hot girls, there's a yacht full of hot guys, I can have a lot of fun and party, you're dead right. They're coming into the industry for completely the wrong reason. And I'll tell you something worse than that. About to come out on Paramount Plus is Hot Yachts. It's actually called Hot Yachts Miami. And that takes a similar but even worse view of the yacht brokerage industry. And from the trailer that I've seen, and I actually saw some of it being filmed, it's all about this broker kissing that broker who's then rebuked by her colleague. That's not what the yacht brokerage industry is at all. And that's not the way that we want to portray it. My opinion on how to promote the real yachting, I try to do that through my YouTube channel. We're actually working on another YouTube channel with Northrop & Johnson that's trying to show in a tasteful way what goes on behind the scenes with our yacht brokerage. It's not going to be a big production. It's not Paramount Plus. We're going to put it on YouTube. It might only be watched by a few hundred people. But certainly, I think anybody in social media, and by this, Tristan with Super Yacht Captain, myself with the Yachts for Sale channel, Naughty Styles, Aquaholic, of course, I think do a very good job of really showing the industry as it is in a positive light. Yeah, I think that's where I'll leave that question. I hope that's enough for you. Tell me if it's not, because I can go on about it for a little bit longer. Patrick, is this not what we used to call having a little black book before the digital era? It's still what I call having a little black book. And yeah, that's exactly what it is. The relationships you do need, a broker needs a little black book, people they trust to do a good job, whether it's surveyors, project managers, lawyers, they need to have a little black book. And I think most brokers do. Ingle99 says, sorry for the username. My name is Jack Inglis. That sounds like it might be Spanish. Funnily enough, it might be Spanish for English. I don't know. You'll tell me. Maria Levasheva. Hi, Maria. How are you? Hope that all is well. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the webinar, David. As always, very useful. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Austin Bladon. Hi, David from Bunty. Austin, how are you? Upon being recruited by a brokerage company, can you give a summary on what to expect in your first 90 days, assuming it's your first brokerage role? Yes, Austin, by the way, I emailed your father and I've got a special offer for you with regard to the Yacht Broker Masterclass. I really appreciated the help that you gave us when we were filming Bunty. If you haven't seen it, and I'm talking more broadly because I'm sure you have seen it, Austin, the Bunty videos on the Yachts for Sale channel, it was released yesterday. First 90 days, depends which brokerage you go to work for, where, for whom, depends a lot upon where you're at with regard to your little black book and your potential businesses. If I would imagine that coming in cold to the industry, where although you've been a crew member, but you've not actually been involved in brokerage, it's quite likely that you will be put under the mentorship of somebody else. They will ask you to do work such as putting together technical specifications for yachts that they have for sale, maybe accompanying the photographer to make sure that good photography is done, or the videographer to make sure that you get the video that you want. The technical specifications are super important, and you as a crew member will bring real value for that. So many mistakes are made in technical specs that then come and bite you in the behind at a later date. And so they may well get you looking through the technical specifications and verifying them. As I say, responding to inquiries. Dock walking is super important. In your early days, it's really important to just let people know that you're there and that you're a broker. I'll go into that in some detail in the Yacht Broker Masterclass as to ways that you can start up business, start finding sellers, start finding buyers. Of course, once you have a seller, buyers kind of follow as a result of that, because once you're selling something, people are going to come to you because you're selling it, and that makes them a buyer. They might not buy that, but they might buy something else. So one of your first things in your first 90 days you're going to be looking at is trying to get your own listings, trying to find people who want to sell their yacht. And you'll be working for sure under the mentorship of somebody who can help you with that. I'm going to take one more question, and the other questions I think I'm going to use as a basis for the next webinar, which will be in 2 weeks. Leonardo, let's suppose Leonardo Rossi Poledri. Hi, Leonardo. Let's suppose a client is in touch with a broker for a new yacht. Are shipyards happy to work with brokers? Many times they have their dealers. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Actually, many times they don't even have dealers, and some shipyards would much rather that the client goes direct, because from the shipyard's perspective, it may be that cuts out an element that they don't believe is necessary. Other shipyards value a broker because they can see what service the broker can offer in being a go-between with the client. I'll give you an example of that. When certain decisions need to be made along the way, not least of which is the decor of a yacht. And it's great to have the broker chasing the client up, making sure, getting the feedback, acting as a broker in between the two. And so let me just read your question again. Yeah, shipyards, are they happy? Not always. Often yes, sometimes no. When there's a dealer network, which, as you know, is the case with San Lorenzo, then usually the dealer will reluctantly work with the broker if the client has trust in the broker. We're actually doing exactly that right now with a new construction project that we've got, where it's with a shipyard that has a dealer network. And so our broker approached the dealers, did a deal with them, but it's the broker who's in touch with the shipyard. And the dealer will get a little bit of the commission because afterwards he'll be responsible for the service and warranty work. So that concludes it. I'm going to take a look at some of the other questions and use them as the basis for another webinar. I think at the end of this, really a lot is up to those of you who've watched. I assume that if you watch the webinar, it's because you're interested in the more ample masterclass. And if what you want to do from this webinar is take away what you've got from it and use it, that's absolutely great. But if you really want to, I don't know, get into the bus and drive it, if you really want to get into the aircraft and fly, if you really want all of the tools that's needed to follow through and to be an effective yacht broker, that's what the masterclass is all about. As a matter of fact, before the webinar started, I was going through some of the many copious notes I got for the masterclass, and we'll be looking at, over 9 weeks, everything from exactly what the role of a broker is, and it's not what you might think it is, and how much money realistically you can be expected to make as a yacht broker. We'll be looking at how you find and deal with buyers, how you find and deal with sellers, the MEBA contract, the EBA contract, new construction contracts, ownership structures and flags we're going to in a lot more depth. There's a whole module that's just called It's a Relationships Business, which there's plenty of examples, which are bad examples, good examples, and we really hone in on the importance of relationships. And the final module is it's actually called Be Money Smart, and be successful. And it's not just a review of the most important factors of the masterclass, but it's also some very practical advice about how to avoid certain pitfalls that not just myself, but also many of my colleague brokers have fallen into. Really, the masterclass is designed to be a roadmap that also gives you all the tools you need to be able to sell a yacht. Now, we've literally just made active the actual course enrollment. A link to that is in the description below because I put it just before I went live. Click on it, have a look at it. Sign up if it's something that you'd like to do, if you'd like to take things on to the next level. And we'll be doing another webinar in a couple of weeks' time. So thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance.